Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This one we're going over the 10-game NBA slate for tonight on Draftkings, and that's a pretty good slate. A lot of good mid-range options, a lot of good value options considering there's a lot of injuries on tonight's slate. There's a couple of good spend-ups as well, and we'll break it all down. But before we continue, if you guys could leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out, really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at Kristaps16. And if you're interested in spreadsheets about every single night for the NBA season, it's got projections, statistics, everything's color-coded. You got the value plays, my cheat sheet, my defense versus position chart. I update it all the way up until launch so you get the most up-to-date information. The projections update throughout the day. And my Discord chat as well. Links below in the description below for my Patreon. And without further ado, I say we get right into the video. Alright, so digging into this slate, Luke is going to be out. Karl-Anthony Towns is questionable. I don't like the matchup versus Denver either. Joel Embiid's a fine play, but I prefer Andre Drummond here at 9,600. I think he is my favorite spend up of the entire slate. He comes in at 9,600, and I just think this is a pretty darn good play tonight. And it's mainly because he's going to have to shoulder the load here. There's a mountain of injuries on Detroit tonight. Kennard's doubtful, Griffin's doubtful, Christian Wood's out. Not as much of a mountain of injuries as Toronto, but still two important pieces around. Then a decent backup is out as well. So, Andre Drummond, he's going to have to run the show here, and he should be able to smash. He's going to play big minutes as always, and I like that he's also sub 5 digits. He should probably be above 10K, but he's not. He's coming off of 2 good games in a row where he had 51 points versus Dallas, 52 points versus Toronto, then that 65-point game versus Indianapolis, and he only played 25 minutes versus New Orleans and got 26 points, so still about a point per minute right there. But Andre Drummond, he should have a pretty good game tonight. I mean, earlier in the season, this guy was a lock button play every single time Blake was out, and that's what we're going to get tonight, and also Kennard's out as well. And 9,600, not a bad price for him, and he's averaging 1.42 points per minute this season, and he just had a fantastic game in a tougher matchup versus Toronto, tougher matchup versus Dallas, did just fine. And this isn't a great matchup versus Boston either, but I'm not really sure he's going to be able to stop him down low. So, gotta love Drummond here, and he's an easy fit in our lineups at only 9,600, not like he's 12K plus. And he's got 60-point upside in this matchup, so gotta like Andre Drummond. He overtook the avocado injury last game, so that should be good to go. And like Andre Drummond quite a bit tonight, he is my favorite spend up of the night. So Siakam's out, so we're going to talk about a lot of Toronto guys coming up, but obviously we're not going to talk about Siakam because that's just a waste of time. But Nikola Jokic here at 9,400, so he's not a core play for me by any means, but he could be a lower owned GPP play. Again, that's what I'm really overly interested in, but he's on my radar at least. So, and he seems to be back. If you just look at his game log recently, 51 points, 50 points, 70 points, 44 points, 43, 47, 56. Since December 6th, he's been pretty good, and he's had over 30 minutes in each game, so he looks fine. He's hitting his threes too. He's been shooting multiple threes per game, 2 for 4, 2 for 5, 3 for 6, 2 for 5. I like the minutes that he's been getting, and he just seems a little bit too cheap for his recent form, and he's a walking triple-double every single night. He's got that upside every single night. If you look at his recent games, 18 points, 9 boards, 12 assists, 10 boards, 5 assists, 25 points, 28 points, 14 boards, 12 assists. That was your triple-double. He had 70 fantasy points. So Nikola Jokic, I don't think he's a bad play, and this is a nice pace-up spot for the Nuggets as well. Minnesota is second in pace-up play, and Denver is 25th, so it's actually a pretty massive pace-up spot. And he's about 1.35 points per minute this season, 24% usage rate. So Nikola Jokic, I think he's a fine play. Now, would I rather pay 200 more for Drummond? Wait, he's 9,600. Yeah, so would I rather pay 200 more for Andre Drummond? Yes. But that just means Nikola Jokic will be pretty low in tonight. So if you want to pivot off of Drummond, if you don't totally believe in him tonight, you could roll with Jokic. I think they have somewhat similar upside, but I do prefer Drummond. But still think he's a pretty solid GPP play. Bradley Beal, you could play him in GPPs if you just want to run it back, because we're going to be playing a lot of Toronto guys. So I wouldn't hate the idea of using Bradley Beal. This game has the highest over-under on the slate, 7-point spread. And with all the injuries on the Wizards, that's pretty much going to have to be him and Bertans really scoring a lot of points. So, and again, he didn't have a great game last game out, but he was also 1 for 9 from the 3. He's usually going to shoot better than that. Still 13 for 14 from the free throw line, 7 boards, 7 assists, 2 blocks, 1 steal, 22 points. But usually I expect him to score more than 22 points. Still have 45 fantasy points. Overtime helped out a little bit, but still, if you want to game stack this up, Bradley Beal is just fine if you want to run it back with one of the guys on Washington, or if you just want to go complete full game stack, get like 3 guys from the Wizards, 4 guys from the Toronto Raptors. I have no problem with that. But Bradley Beal, pretty much just a GPP play for me. I don't really see myself playing him in cash as of right now. Obviously, I could change my mind about that later on, but I just don't really see myself playing him in cash games tonight. So let's just scroll down a little bit. I want to talk about Brandon Ingram here at 8,700. So he's finally been priced up to a point where I don't feel as comfortable plugging him in, even in a good matchup here, but he's still solid. Like, he's usually in that mid 7K to low 8K range. 8,700, he's priced to the moon here, but I still think he should be in consideration tonight. He's fresh off a monster outing of 56 fantasy points where he had 34 real life points, 3 steals, 1 block, 5 assists, 6 boards in 34 minutes, 3 for 9 from deep. He had a monster game. He also had a 38% usage rate in this game as well, which is the highest it's been in a while. He kind of feels like Spencer Dinwiddie right now. So if you want 40 plus points, Ingram is your guy. It's just unfortunate the price came up. This is the second most expensive price he's seen all season, but he's been good, so I definitely understand it. And it's a good matchup versus Golden State as well, as they are one of the worst defensive teams in the league right now. And also this game features the second highest total on the slate with a 1-point spread. And it's the late game, so I don't mind going with Ingram here, and he should be lower owned with the price hike. I can't see a lot of people paying $8,700 for Brandon Ingram. So definitely understand if you want to use him tonight. He has a usage rate around 30% and is right around 1.3 points per minute. So I actually think he's a pretty solid GPP play. Probably wouldn't play him in cash games considering the price hike, but it's the late game at 10:30. It's a 1-point spread. Should be pretty back and forth. Both teams are really bad defensively. I can see a lot of points being scored here, and I think Brandon Ingram have a lot to do with it. So definitely someone on my radar as of right now in GPPs. And then you could also look to his teammate Drew Holiday and just the game stack. With 8,600, it feels a little bit overpriced for Drew Holiday. 30 points last game, 43, 50 was great, but then 37, 39, 38, 22. Not really someone I'd like to play at 8,600. Just feels a little bit overpriced. I'd rather just play Brandon Ingram, to be honest. But Kyle Lowry, I do have a lot of interest in Kyle Lowry. He comes in at 8,500, and the price came up a lot, but that's just because of all the injuries. And we're gonna be playing a ton of Raptors tonight, just given all the injuries. We have Siakam out, Van Vliet is questionable, Powell is out, Gasol is out. So there's some big name injuries on this team that's gonna open up a lot of minutes and usage for the rest of the guys on this team that are actually healthy. Now Lowry's already a solid play if Fred plays, but if he's out, I don't see how we don't want to fire up Kyle Lowry here, as will be pretty much the only big name starter left. It's a small sample size of only 25.7 minutes, but with those 4 off the court this season, Lowry has a 37% usage rate and 1.65 points per minute. That's massive. And don't even get me started on the matchup, as they are tonight's lucky winners of getting to play the Washington Wizards, who these games usually turn into shootouts and a ton of points are usually scored, so they're usually great for fantasy purposes. Washington is second worst defensively this season for fantasy points given up to all positions, and they rank 27th versus point guards. And they're also 5th in pace of play, while Toronto is 13th, so it should be a pretty fast-paced matchup. I think it should be... Oh, my heater just turned on. Let me turn that off. Sorry, this might chop up a little bit. I had to go turn my heater off. It gets a little loud, so I don't know if you guys can actually hear it or not. Hopefully you shouldn't. The microphone should cut it off, the background noise, but things usually don't work how they say they work. But anyway, this should be a pretty fast-paced matchup. I think I just said this, but in case it cut off, Washington's 5th in pace of play. Toronto is 13th, so it's a paced-up spot, but both teams are play pretty fast, so I do like that. This game also features the highest over-under the slate at 230.5 with a 7-point spread, so a lot of points are going to be scored in this game, and if all those guys are out for Toronto, really the only guy that's questionable is Van Vliet. The rest of the guys are out, so if Van Vliet's out, Lowry becomes a fantastic play at 8,500. I'd prefer him over guys like Ingram or Drew Holiday at this price point, so definitely have some interest in Kyle Lowry for sure. Would be one of the best plays on the slate if every single guy is out on that team. Kristaps Porzingis, you can look his way tonight in GPPs. I really don't have too much interest versus Philly. They're just a really good defensive team. But with Luka Doncic out, he has been an absolute stud. 22 points, 14 boards. 26 points, 12 boards. 23 points, 13 boards. You're pretty much going to get 20 plus points and about 13 rebounds. And he scored 51 points, 53 points, 51 points. Now this is a tougher matchup versus the Philadelphia 76. I said the Eagles, 76ers here. But the tougher matchup versus Miami, he still dropped 51, and I think he's a safe bet for 40 plus points in this matchup. I just think there's better plays on the slate, point per dollar wise. But the guy's been really good without Luka Doncic, so definitely someone you can look in GPPs. You could probably look his way in cash games, but just a tougher matchup tonight. And scrolling down a little bit, Nikola Jokic at 8,100. Again, another guy you could just look for in GPPs. Not really a core play for me by any means, but in the first 3 games back from injury have not been great. He had 38 points, 34 points, 36 points. Not absolutely terrible, but you expect more from Nikola Jokic. But we know the guy's got upside. I believe he had a 60-point game recently. Yeah, I say recently, but in his recent games he's played versus Washington, which everyone does good versus Washington, but still 63 fantasy points, then 39, 45, 51, 59, 48. So the guy's got upside. It's just returning from injury, he hasn't really shown it much. Oops. But definitely someone to have on your radar. It's a good matchup versus Portland. They play a little faster than the Magic for sure. The Magic play very slow. Portland, I believe, just plays a little above average in pace of play. So I do like that. And Portland is 27th versus center, so it's a good matchup down low for Vucevic. So he could break out of his little slump here from returning from injury. 20 plus points, maybe 13 plus rebounds. I could definitely see that happening from Vucevic, and I'd expect him to have literally no ownership tonight. So someone you could look at for GPPs. And scrolling down a little bit here, we have Ja Morant at 7,800. Now, I have not played him yet this season. I just really don't. He's not really the type of guy I usually play. But GPP only play, but point guards versus Cleveland, it's just the gift that keeps on giving. We just saw Terry Rozier smash. I think he had, 50 points? Was it 50 or 60? I don't remember exactly. It was either 50 or 60 points, but he smashed at 6K. And we know Morant has big upside. He also has a lower floor, but he can definitely hit 50 fantasy points. Past few games, 38, 36, 35. Not terrible, not too great either. Then 28 points versus Phoenix, but then 41 versus Golden State, 22, then 53, 44, 46. So the guy's got upside, and this is an elite matchup versus Cleveland. They're 29th versus point guards. So I wouldn't hate taking a shot on him in GPPs. This game also has a 222-point over-under, which is third highest in the slate, and we also have a tight 1-point spread. So this game might be sneaky good for GPPs tonight. So don't mind Ja Morant in GPPs, not cash games, but don't mind him in tournaments. Van Vliet's questionable. If he plays, and he has no restrictions, yeah, he should be a pretty solid play at 7,700. All the injuries on the slate tonight, so Van Vliet I would have some interest in him for sure. Just don't know if he's gonna play. It's versus Washington, so I could see them giving him just another night off and come back in the next game. But he's going to be a game time decision, so as of right now, we have no idea. But if he plays, no restrictions, pretty good matchup versus Washington. Love the game environment, so I wouldn't mind him whatsoever. Then his teammate Serge Ibaka, I think he's an excellent play at 7,400 tonight. So DraftKings finally did something right, and they priced up a player that would benefit from injury. Usually they leave these guys at 5K. They usually don't move the price tags, and they just become the absolute chalk of the night. If Ibaka was 5K, he would be 95% owned tonight. At 7,400, it makes you think about it a little bit. So I'll applaud DraftKings here. Their pricing has been absolutely awful this year. They finally did something right with Serge Ibaka, so hats off to them. They finally did it. They priced a guy up that's going to benefit from injury, and they already knew the news. So, like I said, they bumped his price up, and it's deservedly so. He played 31 minutes last game versus Detroit, had 18 shots, and had 13 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and 48 fantasy points. So you gotta like Ibaka tonight. He should push for over 30 minutes tonight. An elite matchup down low versus Washington, given all the injuries. And Washington is 26th versus centers. They just suck down low, so it's a really good matchup for Ibaka. He's averaging 1.19 points per minute on the season, but if you run the numbers with all the guys off the court due to injuries, he has a 31% usage rate, which is elite, and then a 1.3 points per minute rate, which is also fantastic for someone that's 7,400. So, gotta like Serge Ibaka here. For an example, Andre Drummond's at 1.42 points per minute. So if Ibaka is going to run about 1.38 points per minute, not too bad. 31% usage rate as well. It's a great matchup versus Washington. So despite the price jump, he's still a very good play in my opinion tonight. So do have some interest in Serge Ibaka for sure. Think he's cash game and GPP viable tonight. Then Kevin Love, 7,200. So I do have interest in Kevin Love tonight. And I really liked him a lot in that game versus Charlotte, and he dropped 50 points. And honestly, I could see something similar happening again. Most of his bad games tend to be in blowouts where he barely plays. So a lot of these games he sucked, but he didn't play big minutes. 25 minutes versus Toronto, 22 points. 26 minutes versus Milwaukee, not too bad, 33 fantasy points still. Then 39 minutes versus San Antonio. I believe that game went into overtime though, but still 56 fantasy points. 32 minutes versus Houston, 37 fantasy points. And then he had some really sucky games here. Only saw 27 minutes, 21 fantasy points. 20 minutes, 15 points. 22 minutes, 20 points. Yeah, you're not going to hit your ceiling when you're only playing 20-some minutes. So I do like Kevin Love here. And then the competitive game versus Milwaukee, 31 points, 37 minutes. This should be a competitive game. We have a 1-point spread, and it's a pretty high total. So I like Kevin Love quite a bit here. And most sites will project him for sub 30 minutes tonight, which that doesn't make sense to me at all because this game should be competitive. And when it's a competitive game, Kevin Love plays 30-plus minutes. It happens every time. We see, look, competitive game versus Charlotte. 32 minutes. Competitive game versus San Antonio, 39 minutes. Competitive game versus Houston, 32 minutes. And these games were blowouts. But competitive game versus Milwaukee, 31 minutes. He should see 30-plus minutes tonight. And if you bump him up to 31 to 32 minutes in projection systems, and I did it to mine, he becomes a pretty good point per dollar play. I see no reason why he can't have a good game and reach 40 fantasy points versus Memphis. And it's a nice fast-paced matchup versus Memphis, who's 8th in pace of play, and both teams can't play defense whatsoever, so this should lead to a pretty high-scoring game, and Vegas would tend to agree with a third highest total on the slate. Love is averaging 1.17 points per minute on the season, and I think he's a pretty solid play tonight as long as he gets 30-plus minutes given a competitive game. So definitely got to like Kevin Love quite a bit. I do think he's a pretty solid GPP play. Could not see a lot of people playing him on tonight's slate, so definitely someone to keep on your radar. Davis Bertans at 6,900. So I actually tweeted that he was the best player in the NBA on, was it Wednesday? I was kidding, but the guy's really fun to watch. He's pretty good. I actually just learned he has 4.5 fingers. I don't know if you guys knew that. They said it on the broadcast, so I looked it up, and like his hand looks like, I don't know, like it looks like this. I looked it up, and I think he sawed it off when he was cutting wood when he was little, something like that. But it's pretty cool. The guy's an excellent shooter. He's really fun to watch. He's pretty darn good. He hit like 3 threes in a row at one point. Hit one from the logo. It was insane. The guy's really fun to watch. And I don't see why we can't go back to the Bertans well here. He was chalk on that night. I believe he was 80% owned in cash games. His price came up 400, but I don't see why we can't play him again. Rui's still out, as well as Wagner and Thomas Bryant, so I say why the heck not? Let's go back to the GOAT Bertans here. He played 36 minutes last game, and he posted a 20% usage rate, and he did his usual blazing of three-pointers, 7 for 13. I said he was going to get 10-plus three-pointers in this game with all the minutes he's going to play, and he did, and he hit 7 of them. That's just what he does. He is an elite shooter. And every time he shoots, I'm surprised when it doesn't go in, to be honest. And without those 3 on the court, he's averaging 22% usage rate, 1.27 points per minute. This is the highest total on the slate. Bertans, he should be gunning it from deep again. Should get 12-plus three-pointers here if he hits over half of them. Doesn't surprise me. Should see 35-plus minutes. I think he gets you over 40 fantasy points. He could be able to get nice. Should be able to get a double-double tonight. Maybe. Might be pushing it a little bit, but definitely like Bertans here. Think he's an excellent play. And he's got near 60-point upside. Just depends on how the threes are falling. So love Davis Bertans here. I feel like he might go a little bit lower owned tonight. I don't think he's going to even come close to what he did the night before. So Bertans lower ownership. I like the upside. And if you're going to game stack that up, why not play Davis Bertans here? He's got a huge upside. So I do like Bertans. And scrolling down a bit here, Draymond Green. I don't have a lot of interest in Draymond, especially at 6,500. I prefer him in the 5K range. So I don't even know why I brought him up. I really don't like him tonight. But it's a 1-point spread. I believe the second highest over-under. Play at 10:30. So I don't hate Bertans. He did have not Bertans, Draymond Green, he did have a huge game versus New Orleans. I don't think it's going to pop up on the 10-game log here. It was a while ago. But yeah, it's a 56-point game versus New Orleans where he dropped a triple-double, I believe. But really not relevant on this slate. Jalen Brunson, he's been good, but it's a really tough matchup versus Philly. 37 points, 38 points, 36 points since Luke has been out. He does it all. He gets rebounds, he gets assists, he gets points. I like him. It's just, 6,400 is a little tough price to play for someone facing Philly. But I do like the uptake in usage that he sees in points per minute. Let's see. Tristan Thompson, if you just want exposure to this Cleveland-Memphis game, it could be a sneaky GPP stack tonight. Can't see a lot of people stacking that up. So I wouldn't hate the idea of using him, but I'd rather just play Kevin Love, to be honest. But I realize there's a price difference there. But Derrick Rose, I want to talk about Derrick Rose. He comes in at 6K even, and I think he's a pretty solid play tonight. So like I said earlier, Detroit has some injuries they're dealing with, and if you run the numbers with them off the court, this season, D Rose has a 33.8% usage rate, which is fantastic coming off the bench. And he's averaging 1.43 points per minute, which is, again, absolutely fantastic for someone that's 6K. It's a sucky matchup versus Boston, however, but still, you can't ignore the strong numbers, and I think Derrick Rose is a pretty solid play tonight given those numbers. I mean, those are great numbers. And past 4 games, he's been great. 30 points, 43, 43, 30. So you have a lot of interest in Derrick Rose. Should push for about 30 minutes tonight, 1.4 points per minute. He should be a pretty good play. So I do like Derrick Rose as of right now. And at this point, we're just getting some of the mid-range plays that are just okay lineup fillers, like OG. You could play him at 5,600. There's so many injuries on this team. Last game, he had 35 minutes, 35 fantasy points, 19 points, 8 boards, 3 assists. Don't hate him. I think he's a solid lineup filler. Not a core play, but if he fits at the end of your lineup, I don't hate it. It's a great matchup versus Washington. They're dead last versus small forwards. So I wouldn't mind OG. You could also look at... let's see. Where's Troy Brown at? I thought he was 5,500, but I guess he's not. Well, I guess I'll just look him up. Like 5,200. All right, I don't want to get stuck in here, so let's just go down to 5,200. So I don't mind Troy Brown. Just getting exposure to this game. It's not the best matchup versus Toronto, but this should be a pretty high-scoring game. And with all the guys off the court, we have a 133-minute sample size, which is pretty decent. And with all those guys off the court, Brown has a 22% usage rate and a 1.3 point per minute rate. That's pretty solid, to be honest. I think he can get you 25 plus points in this matchup. So Troy Brown, someone on my radar. Again, he's kind of like OG. If he fits the end of your lineup, I don't hate it because it's part of a good game environment. A lot of points are going to be scored, so don't mind Troy Brown. You could also look at Bruce Brown, who is 5,100. And again, just so many injuries on Detroit. Should see extended run here and usage. Maybe push for 30 minutes tonight. You know, he's shown big upside when he gets the minutes. 31 minutes versus Houston, 48 points, 27 minutes versus Washington, 39 points. Those are also really good matchups, but still, points still count all the same. He does a little bit of everything. Gets the rebounds, he gets the assists, blocks, steals, points. It's pretty good, so don't mind Bruce Brown, 5,100. Not the worst play in the world. You could also look at Markieff Morris, but not really too interested in him at 5K, but not the worst matchup as a power forward versus Boston, but I don't love him at this price point. But some guys I really do have some interest in is some of these cheap Toronto guys. So we're going to get to our first guy, and it's Rondé Hollis-Jefferson. He comes in at 4,100. He's one of the best value plays on the slate, in my opinion. So, like I already said, there's so many injuries on Toronto, so more minutes to go around, and he should see 25 to 28 minutes tonight. And with everyone off the court, he's got a 21.5% usage rate and 0.8 point per minute rate. So that's not bad. And this is an elite matchup down low versus Washington. You know, fast-paced game. A lot of points are going to be scored here. Toronto's going one of the highest point implied team totals on the slate. So Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, I think he's a pretty solid play. I think he can get you 20 to 28 fantasy points tonight, maybe more. So Hollis-Jefferson, definitely have a lot of interest in him tonight. I also like his teammate, Chris Boucher, quite a bit. I actually might like him over at Rondé Hollis-Jefferson just from a point per dollar standpoint. But Chris Boucher, I think he's a very good play tonight. He should be popular, but it's for good reason, as he's our value play at almost bare minimum. We do want exposure to this game, as Washington is just the gift that keeps on giving for fantasy points. And I do think he can flirt with 20-some minutes tonight, which that'll do given his price point. With everyone off the court this season, he has a 21.1% usage rate and is averaging 1.1 points per minute. I mean, you're going to give me about 23 to 25 fantasy points from someone that's pretty much near bare minimum. An elite matchup, I will take it all day. So Chris Boucher, one of the top value plays, on the slate in my opinion tonight. Then you could also look at Langston Galloway as another good value play at 3,300. So he's going to get big minutes tonight, given all the injuries, and I have him projected for about 35 minutes tonight. Now, he's not a good point per minute guy. He's only averaging 0.63 points per minute, but you know, if you're going to give me 35 minutes, I think he could flirt with 20 fantasy points, maybe even more, given all the injuries. So Langston Galloway, definitely someone that can be on my radar as of right now. I think that's going to be it for this video, guys. I felt like that was a long video, but there's just a lot to talk about on this slate. So again, I hope this video was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter, ChrisPennell16. All my spreadsheets are available in the link in the description below, where I update it all the way up until lock, so you get the most up-to-date information. My projections change throughout the day, and my Discord chat as well, where you can bug me as much as you want. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video. Wish you guys the best of luck, and I think it's Friday. It is Friday. I'm on break, so it feels like every day's Friday, to be honest. So hope you guys have a great start to the weekend. If you haven't already, check out the NFL videos if you're interested in NFL, and see ya.